What is going on? Want to talk today about some of my favorites, as well as some of my least favorites camera gear that I've ever purchased. Let's dive in.
Are you tired of the endless stream of fantasy marketing and vanity metrics? Yeah, so am I. My name is James Patrick, and I'm an internationally published photographer, media specialist, and marketing strategist. As a creative entrepreneur, I face the same exact frustrations you have, being bombarded by generic advice that promises success but never lives up to the hype. We need to move beyond the posturing, beyond the facade, beyond the image to navigate the unique challenges we face as creatives. Together, we're going to dive into real stories, real strategies, and the real work that can lead to the real results. This is the Beyond the Image podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in to our latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm Ron, that you could take some time to get some information and get a little inspiration to help you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. So let's dive in. Have two lists. Have a list of some of my favorite pieces of photo gear excuse me, that I've bought in 20 plus years, as well as pieces of photo gear that I wish I could get my money back. And maybe I can't get my money back because, well, maybe I was too proud to return it. Bought some of those pieces of gear, or maybe I just waited too long and it's been a bit past the warranty and they're not going to give me my money back. But let's start positive. What are some of the best pieces of photo gear that I've ever purchased? And I'm going to start this off with the Canon 70-200 f2.8 L series lens. I've been using this lens as my main lens for as long as I've been a photographer. It was one of the first lenses I ever got. It was the first L series lens that I purchased. Well over 90%, and I would say 95%, well over 95% of the magazine covers that I've shot with this lens. Now, my version of this lens is so old that Canon will not service it anymore, but I don't care. I'm going to keep using this lens even if I need to duct tape it together. And I know all the quirks about this lens that I've had for 2 decades now. I know it's softer at 2.8. I know where it's most razor sharp. I know how to use it in different situations or circumstances or settings. It by far is my favorite piece of glass. And my second favorite piece of glass is next on the list, which is the 24-70 f2.8 L series. My first time I purchased this, it was actually the second L series I ever bought. I bought one when I was in college. That one broke, and Canon, unfortunately, refused to service that lens. You're noticing a theme here as Canon is trying to move out of the SLR market and into the mirrorless market. They don't want to service these very expensive pieces of glass from the SLR market. Oh, well, thanks, Canon. That being said, it is a brilliant lens for almost anything. I could use it for fashion. I use it for portraits, for landscape, for shooting events. Having it at f2.8, it is amazing at low light. It is incredibly sharp at every aperture. It is almost always in my camera bag as my secondary lens. The third lens on this list is the Canon 50 f1.8 USM. Now, this is a spectacular lens that I love to use for editorial or environmental portraits, where I'm incorporating a lot of the environment in and around the subject I'm photographing. It is brilliantly sharp at its most wide open at f1.8. Now, the thing that I like about this lens, the USM lens, is it is thousands cheaper than the L series, which is 1.2. And I don't necessarily need a 1.2. That's not worth the thousands of dollars it would cost to upgrade from the USM. The USM is a phenomenal lens. I could buy a lot of burritos for those thousands of dollars. So I'm going to stick with the 1.8 USM. Now, moving on from glass, the Ellen Chrome Small Deep Rotolux. This is an amazing softbox for dramatic moody portraits. The light is soft, but because it is a smaller softbox, it has a very fast and sharp fall off. Now, I know that I've said that a softbox is a softbox is a softbox, and for the most part, I agree. And the only exception I will have to that, in my experience, is Elinchrom softboxes. There is just something so amazing about how these shape and push out the light. And this is my favorite modifier for dramatic portraits. I will also add to this list their indirect octa, the Elinchrom indirect octa. I believe mine is a 5-foot indirect octa, and this is the softest of the soft of the soft of the soft light. Using this indirect octa makes me feel like maybe I could shoot like Annie Leibovitz. And yes, it's kind of a pain to set up, but it is the smoothest light with the most gradual, graceful fall off that I've seen from any modifier. It is worth the mortgage that I had to skip in order to pay for this modifier. It is that good. Um, Moving on from modifiers, uh, I bought it used, a Mamiya RZ67 Pro 2. This is a medium format film camera. Now, shooting film to me is just fun as hell. Everything about this camera is painstakingly slow. It takes time to load the film. It takes time to set up your shot because you have a hip viewfinder. It's the viewfinder where you have to look down into the camera, and your image is then flipped. It's inverted. So left is right and right is left, which makes framing your shots and posing and adjusting the posing of your subject that much trickier, because what you're seeing through the viewfinder is the exact opposite of what is happening in front of you. Um, it has the very slow bellows focus on the camera itself. It just takes time to use, and because it takes so much time to use, I think that's why I love it so much. I also have a Mamiya AF645, and I absolutely love using that. But the RZ67, the quality of captures I'm able to get on this using 120 or 220 film is just absolutely mind blowing. Next up on my list is I have a 7-stop variable neutral density filter. Now, I love neutral density filters. These are great for moody portraits. These are great for outdoor use when you want rich skies. These are great for anytime you want to open up your aperture, but you want to control the amount of light getting into your camera. And the variable to have that on this filter gives me that extra layer of control. So I use my variable ND filter a lot of times when I'm doing outdoor portraits and I want a really rich, robust, moody sky. This is the perfect modifier for that. Last on my list is the Lacy rugged drives. I have a bunch of these. I use them on every project. I use them all the time, and I'm so grateful for them. And in fact, I've had some of my Lacy drives for well over 10 years. And if I still have any issues with my Lacy drives, their customer service is still right on with helping. So I cannot sing enough praise about Lacy drives. Okay. I feel like that was enough positive. I feel like we started off on the right foot. Now let's start to gripe. Let's start to complain. Let's start to get into the things that, well, I wish I could get my money back. The first off is a Paul C. Buff ring flash. Now, when I got this light, which was 20 years ago, I thought owning this light, just the act of owning this light, was going to dramatically transform my portrait work. And I was finally going to have those professional looking trendy photos. Now, mind you, this was 20 years ago, that all these amazing professionals are getting with their ring flashes. And I finally have a ring flash. And what I found was that this light was incredibly difficult to use. I wasn't that great at using it. And I really didn't care for the look that I was achieving with this light. And I'd spent a lot of money to not like what I was getting. So I still own this thing. I've had it, like I said, for almost 20 years. Um, it is so brittle, it's falling apart. The plastic is just flaking off of it. I maybe use it once a year, maybe. So I probably have not got my money's worth out of that. Okay, next up, the Paul C. Buff giant softbox. When this came out, I was really excited. It wasn't just a big softbox, it was a giant softbox. This thing was massive. It was so enormous. And I was so excited because, like, oh, the light I'm going to get off this thing is going to be so soft. Here's the problem with this modifier: it was incredibly heavy, obnoxiously heavy, and ridiculously cumbersome. And if you're not familiar with Paul C. Buff mounts, the entire mount system is set up by using small metal clamps. 4 small metal clamps. That's it. This softbox was so heavy, it was actually bending and breaking the metal clamps off the lights. This softbox was actually breaking the mounts that it was specifically designed for. What an appalling freaking design on that one. But I actually have a bit more to say about Paul C. Buff and their modifiers. So next on the list is every single Paul C. Buff modifier, every one of them. There was a time when Paul C. Buff played an important role. And the role they played was to provide affordable lighting solutions to photographers who were budget conscious or very new to the industry or were very unsure of if this was something they wanted to invest a lot into. Because being a photographer, at one point, there was a high barrier for entry. And one of the biggest parts of that was the cost to become a photographer. Cameras were expensive, lenses were expensive, film was expensive, lighting equipment was prohibitively expensive. Paul C. Buff really changed that and made lighting available to photographers who historically would never have been able to have lighting equipment. And I'm grateful as a photographer who was in college, who did not have a lot of money, who was scraping together paycheck to paycheck to buy pieces of gear one at a time. I was grateful that a company like Paul C. Buff existed, that their brand Alien Bees existed, because I could afford that. I could buy that and still buy groceries. They were innovative. Paul C. Buff was innovative. Their Vagabond battery packs, that was revolutionary. Once again, an extremely affordable solution for creatives that before would have been too cost prohibitive for anyone to achieve portable power for their lighting. But at some point, and I could hypothesize it's when the founder of the company passed away, but at some point around then, the perception is they stopped innovating as much. And the prices started to get a little steeper. So as a consumer, you're seeing a company that appears to be getting lazy and also appears to be getting a little greedier. Their prices start to go up. Their soft boxes are now, all of them are like well over $200. You can get the exact same quality of softbox, the exact same quality of modifier under $70. There is no reason that Buff should be charging what they are charging right now, because their quality as a company has not drastically improved in direct proportion to the price that they are assessing their consumers. All right, next up are the Interfit S1 strobes. I bought 3 of these over, it was like late 2019, early 2020. And the reason I bought them is they appeared at the time to be a great affordable alternative to the Profoto B1s. Profoto hit the market with their battery powered units, and they were they're still outstanding. I've rented them. They're amazing to use, but I cannot justify the Profoto price for a light. But Interfits, I could get 2 or 3 for what it would cost me to get a single Profoto. But at some point, Interfit kind of stopped existing. At least it appeared to stop existing. And the units I bought literally fell apart, fell to pieces. And then shortly thereafter, other companies like Godox and their Adorama version Flashpoint, they surged in the market with even better products, even more affordable products, especially for battery-powered lights. So Interfit S1 strobes. Next up is the Elinchrom BRX 500. Now, as you've heard, I'm pretty obsessed with Elinchrom modifiers. I've spent several mortgages on Elinchrom modifiers, but I bought an Elinchrom BRX 500 to use with my indirect OXA because I was too dumb to just buy a modifying speed ring. Oops. I eventually did buy that. I didn't use this light more than 10 times before there was this loud bang from the light and literal smoke pouring out of it. And I didn't even like the light before it blew up on me. Next up is the product light cone. Hey, here's a question. Do you want to spend around $180 for a dog cone that's marketed as a photography tool? Well, me neither. So I bought it for $1 off an auction website. And honestly, for $1, it was still overpriced and I threw it in the trash. It is the exact same thing as a dog collar or dog cone. There's no difference. It's the same material, it's the same size, but because they slap the word photography on it, they're going to charge you 100 times more than you should be paying. And it works as well as you would think a dog cone would work to take photos, in that it didn't. Next up are V-flats. Now, this one comes with an asterisk because I use my V-flats every single time I'm in the studio. I use them several days a week. I'm just really perplexed and probably a little pissed that V-flat World charges over $200 for something that if I had a big enough truck, I could just go to Home Depot and buy some insulation foam core, paint half the side black, and I'd have everything I need for $10. And here's the thing, for $200, more than $200, the quality and the durability is not there. Mine are more held together now by gaffer tape. They might even be more gaffer tape than they are original material at this point because they've fallen apart so many times. And I just think this is an example where we as photographers, we're just used to getting bent over on prices, so we're used to it. All right, next up is the Drobo system. When I bought my Drobo system, I thought, finally, I have all the space to keep all my files secure forever. Wait a second. What's that red light? Drive failure. These drives aren't supposed to fail. That's the whole point of this. I haven't even had this thing for a year yet. Well, let me contact Drobo support. Oh, Drobo support's not willing to help me. Nice. That's a great way to lose several $1,000s in all of my files. Thanks, Drobo. Well, Drobo's not listening to this because they went out of business. All right, next on the list is every light meter I've ever purchased. I don't like light meters, and I might get some heat for this. I have this thing called a digital camera with a playback functionality. I just need to press play on the back of my camera to see what my lights are doing. I don't need a light meter to tell me what my eyes can clearly see. The only time I ever really used my light meter was when I wanted to look more professional with some clients. So I'd bring a light meter and hang it around my neck so I looked like I knew what I was doing, because in the movies they wear light meters around their necks. All right, next one. I might get heat for this one too, is the color checker. I've maybe used this twice and then I put it back in its box. I do portrait photography, and in portrait photography, I feel color perception is very subjective. If I want a photo warmer, I'm going to warm up the Kelvin temperature. If I want it cooler, I'm going to lower the Kelvin temperature. It's that simple to me. I'm going to do what looks good. And if I don't like how it looks after I take the photo, I can just change it in post-production. Pretty simple. Next up is the Rode video mic. I need to preface this by saying I absolutely love Rode products. I have the Rodecaster board. I have multiple Procaster mics. I have the Rode Go Lav. I have the Rode Shotgun mic. Love Rode. But the onboard video mic that I spent a lot of money on was absolute garbage and did not capture audio effectively at all. It worked about as well as the onboard microphone in my camera. So still love you, Rode. Spend several G's on you. Please don't hate me for saying that. Now, this brutal critique does not mean I'm not willing to accept free gear from any of these companies, should they want to give it to me. My consumer brand loyalty is absolutely for sale. And that means you, Policy Buff. I've paid enough into your company to probably own 5.8% of your company. So if you want to throw a few extra units my way, I won't say no. But let me know what your thoughts are. What are some of your favorite and least favorite pieces of photo gear that you've ever purchased? Drop it in the comment section or shoot me a message at jpatrickphoto on Instagram. At James Patrick Photos at Instagram is my other portfolio account. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.